Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Clarksville's Political Forum. I'm Van Stokes, your moderator for today's session. And on behalf of Leadership Clarksville and your Clarksville Area Chamber of Commerce, we're pleased that you could join us once again today. Today's forum is coming to you from the Customs House Museum and Cultural Center located here in the heart of Clarksville. This forum is intended to give you, the voters, an informed choice when you go to the polls to vote for your candidate on November the 3rd. Today, we'll have the opportunity to talk with the candidates who will be on the ballot for the Clarksville City Council representing Ward number 11. They are, to my left, Mr. Gary Norris, Ms. Ashley Evans, and Mr. Jimmy Brown. Now, in a moment, they will each have 2 minutes in which to present opening comments from their seats here at the table. Following their opening remarks, we will then turn to our panelists for questions. Joining us once again for this session, on my right are our panelists, Mr. Jimmy Settle, Mr. Lee Irwin, and Mr. Jay Albertia. Now, each candidate will be given 1 minute in which to respond to each question, and responses will be given in a rotating order. At the conclusion of the questioning, each candidate will then have 2 minutes in which to present closing comments. Closing remarks will be presented in reverse order from their opening comments. Our timekeeper for this session is Mr. Phil Harpel. The City Council here in Clarksville is comprised of 12 council members, each representing a respective ward of the city. The council members are elected to a 4-year term. Now, the City Council votes on city ordinances and resolutions governing the city of Clarksville. It also approves the budget for the city, sets the city property tax rate, and does a myriad of other things. The council is also responsible for adopting potentially far-reaching policies and ensuring that those policies are actually acted upon and followed up. Each council member is appointed to serve on one or more committees. Those committees might be the Community and Economic Development Committee, the Finance Committee, the Gas and Water Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee, the Public Safety Committee, Streets and Garage Committee, or the Transportation Committee. Without further ado, let's go now to our candidates for their opening remarks. We will hear first from Mr. Gary Norris.
Thank you. My name is Gary Norris. I'm a lifelong resident of Clarksville. I was involved in a small business, a family business, for about 40 years. I have been involved in the community on different boards and commissions since about 1980. And I think that has given me a lot of insight as to how the city government works with the businesses and individuals in Clarksville. I think the 3 big issues that I see coming up in the next few years is, of course, growth, traffic, and I could probably name several others, but one that's really important to me is input from the community. I think the community needs to have conversations with their city councilman and mayor about issues that they have. We work off of information that comes from the community, and the more information we have, the more that we can do to have the right answer to the question. I would like to be your city councilman for the next 2 years, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
And thank you. Next, we'll hear opening comments from Ms. Ashley Evans.
Hi, my name's Ashley Evans. I want to first off say thank you, Chamber of Commerce, for having us here. I was unsure I was going to make it because I didn't want to miss out on class, but this is very important to me. I am originally from a big city in Iowa called Cedar Rapids. I pride myself very much for being from such a large community in a small, kind of forgotten state. So that's why Clarksville has grown so much on my heart, and I'm running for city council just because I want to be that representation for maybe the folks who don't feel heard in their community. The average age of a Clarksvillian is 29 years old. I am 27. I just want to kind of open the doors for folks wanting to do something big like this. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear opening comments from Mr. Jimmy Brown.
Hello, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and Leadership Clarksville for hosting this event. As we all know that Leadership Clarksville class of 2011 was the best class, but which I was a graduate of course, so we just got to throw that out there. I've been in Clarksville, Montgomery County since 1989. I've lived in the same residence that I'm in now, which is in Ward 11, since 1999. I've seen the growth that's coming up and been growing around the community. I'm a public servant. I've worked for the county for 20 years. A lot of that time was spent working out on the street, seeing the roads, talking to the public, seeing what issues are coming up. And so that's what some of our focus is of course the roads, the growth, and jobs. We want to make sure that we have jobs here to keep people here, such as when they retire out of the military. We want them to stay in our community because Clarksville is the best place to live in the country. So that's just a little bit about me, and I thank y'all for your vote and I appreciate your support.
Thank you very much. And I should add the caveat that hardly anybody who graduates from Leadership Clarksville, they have to say that their class might be the best class. Comes with the territory. Let's turn to our candidates now, if we can. We will take the first question from Mr. Jimmy Settle, and it will go to Mr. Gary Norris for the first response.
Thank you. Mr. Norris, a variety of capital projects are in the works, both in city and county government right now, to support events, concerts, and sporting events, that sort of thing. The county's multipurpose event center, accompanied by a city parking garage, is an example. The city also has 300 acres off Rossview Road for a family athletic complex someday. There's still talk of a downtown performing arts center, and progress is being made now on a hotel and conference center with an office park near Exit 4. So my question becomes, is it right for local government to be involved in such a multitude of public projects like this? What is your stance on that? And should one of these be the priority projects at this moment?
Well, there are a lot of balls up in the air, you might say, right now for capital projects. It takes money, but it takes somebody to organize and come up with the ideas for these projects. And I think that's where the city can help private individuals if they want to get involved. I think that all the projects that you just named are very important. If we can come up with ways to fund it, and we'll be working on that within the next year or so, I think we ought to try to complete all of them. Clarksville's growing, and we need to have things for people to do that come here. We have a lot of people out bringing industry and businesses to Clarksville, and we need to support them. So I think the growth is good. I'm for the projects and hope we can get them all funded.
Ms. Evans, what is your response?
Yeah, so I am also for the MPAC and a performance arts center, as well as the office spaces. Is that on Exit 8? I think all of those are very important to a growing city. However, I feel like as important as these things are, we do need to focus on our infrastructure. I do know that that's a major talking point as well. We just need to make sure that that's a priority on top of all of these centers being built. I do believe that Clarksville needs some of these entertainment spaces and just more for folks to do around here. I think the Performance Arts Center is amazing. I love any type of creative outlet for especially the younger generations. So yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Well, I agree, with the projects that are coming here, the impact, the possibility of the hotel, convention space, business park out by the mall. With that, we need to also look at encouraging the state as much as we can to build Exit 6. Because if we put that facility right there, Wilma Rudolph is already overcrowded. We need to have another outlet for people to be able to get to the interstate from there. The impact downtown is going to bring a lot of people downtown. It's going to help support the businesses downtown, which brings in tax dollars. And if we can keep the people in Clarksville going to activities, those tax dollars stay here that will help support our community. So we want to make sure that we support anything that we can to help keep these tax dollars here. especially if we can support just a little bit to where private businesses will invest.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee Irwin, your question will go to Ms. Evans for the first response.
Well, Ms. Evans, now revenue for city needs and operations, that continues to be very tight as far as budget. What specifically would you like to see to get more revenue generating opportunities into Clarksville?
Yeah, so I'd like to see maybe a fine-tooth combing in our budget to maybe squeeze some different monetary, like, what is the word I am looking for? Squeeze some money out of some things to put them into other prioritized projects to find that funding there, as well as getting as many volunteers to maybe help with these projects. I always love a community effort, especially when we're doing things that will benefit our community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown?
Well, I think on the tax dollars, what we can do that will bring more revenue in is we don't need to raise taxes, for one. We have a good tax rate here that's not too high compared to other places in the country. But if we bring the jobs in that keeps people here or helps people to move here, that will bring additional tax dollars in that will help fund additional items that we need, help support the roads for the growth. So I think if we bring the jobs in, that will help the budget, really, because people are going to want to live here. Even if they don't live here but work here, they spend money here for lunch, before work, after work. So, keeping that revenue here to where we can use that funding for our budgets.
Mr. Norris?
Well, there's always government bonds, and that seems to have been a way to raise capital over the last few years. The sales tax is our number one source of income for the city. The more things that we sell in Clarksville, the more people that shop here, and the more businesses that locate here, especially small business, which is the backbone of this community, I think that will help bring more money in. You talk about the budget. The city looks at that budget very hard every year, and it's sometimes you can cut some corners and sometimes you can't. As we grow, we have to have more services, and those services cost money. So I think it's just day by day on where the money comes from.
Let's go next to Mr. Jay Albertio for the next question, and that will go to Mr. Jimmy Brown for the next response.
Ms. Brown, Clarksville has a lot of needs. What do you think Clarksville's greatest need is, and what is your vision for the next 4 years on what changes would you make to impact the future leadership of Clarksville?
Well, some of our greatest needs, of course, are housing and roads. We need the jobs too, but if you don't have the housing, people aren't going to want to move here because they can't afford to, because the housing costs go up so much if you don't have that inventory. So we need to grow, to keep those costs of living down. The roads, we got to keep working with the state to get some of these roads done, along with the city projects. So we want to make sure that we're focusing the money to where we can get those projects done in a timely manner. It takes years to expand a road because there's so much involved in it. So we want to make sure that we're a good community for people that want to come and live here. So we just want to make sure that we're focused on taking care of our citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Norris?
Well, growth is a real, not a problem, but a challenge. We need 2,000 houses a year here in Clarksville to keep up with the demand that's happening right now. In the past, we've had as many as 2,000 houses on the market for sale. That has dropped to around 400. So we are in desperate need of housing. I think that's going to be a prime problem over the next few years. Infrastructure, roads, always a problem. Our street department does an excellent job in doing what they can. The Planning Commission does an excellent job in advising us on rezoning and where to put the new houses as they're being built.
And Ms. Evans.
Yeah, so as Jimmy and Gary said, our housing market is kind of in crisis in Clarksville. So we do need to make sure that with our growth, we're making sure we have enough inventories to sustain the market and keep our housing affordable. Right now, I believe there are like 500 affordable houses on the market. With that number and the buyout costs, it's not making these houses affordable. As well as putting money into the infrastructure. We kind of have an emergency with our sidewalks and some of the city roads. I know there are some projects in the works. We just need to maintain priority, especially in our infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Let's go back now, if we can, to Mr. Jimmy Settle, and if you will direct your question to Mr. Gary Norris for the first response.
So, Mr. Norris, we'll narrow our focus just a little bit from citywide to Ward 11, if we might, and kind of talk a little bit about what are the issues that you feel are specific to Ward 11, and how would you go about addressing them on the City Council?
I've received several phone calls since I have been on the City Council. Most of them concern commercial property or residential property being used for commercial purposes. And I think that's something that Building and Codes has been on top of for the last few months. The roads and traffic are about the same, but Ward 11 has not been having the rezoning and growth that some of the other wards have. I won't say that we're lucky in that. I'm just going to say that most of the good land was taken up several years ago. But my big issue and problem for the next 2 years is to try to get the people of Ward 11 to talk to me about what the problems are, and as a group, we can try to solve them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Evans?
So in Ward 11, from door knocking, I've heard a lot of concern about our roads and sidewalks and speeding in the neighborhoods. Throughout my for lack of better words, campaign, when talking to these constituents who are worried about speeding, they often mention like speed bumps and things like that. However, the speed bump process is not very easy, and I've informed them of different ways to maybe reduce the speeding in their neighborhoods. And then with the roads, again, we have to prioritize our money to invest in these problematic situations, because we are growing at a fast rate, and these are issues that really need to be solved smartly and quickly.
Mr. Brown?
Well, looking at some of the issues in Ward 11 that I've seen myself going on and talking with people, since Dunbar Cave Road has been closed, there's been a lot of traffic put on to Old Russellville Pike and Rossview. And I contacted the street department one day about the new light there at Warfield and Rossview, because there's so many cars trying to turn left on the Rossview coming from Dunbar Cave that it only let 4 cars through at a time. So we have to address those issues. That is in Ward 11. It's right on the line. And then on the other side, we've got Trenton Road also, which is a state road project, but we can get the city to help support that in what ways we can. So we do have those issues. We might not have as much zoning in our ward, but there's zoning cases that come up that are right across the street from our ward that we need to look at.
Thank you very much. Lee Irwin, your next question will go to Ms. Evans.
Ms. Evans, we learned a lot about you in the opening comments and the other candidates, but quite simply, what qualifies you for the office of City Council, Ward 11, and why should people vote for you?
Yeah, so what qualifies me is that I'm a citizen of Clarksville. I reside here. I live here. Not quite recently. I have a 1.5-year-old son. I intend to raise him here. He's going to be in our school systems and growing up in Clarksville. I do realize that I'm not your run-of-the-mill city council candidate. I'm not involved in the police department. I don't invest in realty. I don't even own my own home. But what matters to me are those voices that don't own homes, that aren't invested in realty or small business owners. I feel like that voice of the population is very much not so much ignored, but not quite heard out, just because all of the other experiences, like owning a small business, investing in realty, and being involved in the police department are also very important. So I just think cohesively, we gotta get out here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jimmy Brown.
Well, I've lived in the community for over 30 years. I've seen the road projects that we have come up. And when I first moved here, 101st wasn't even there. You remember when Lowe's was on the bypass, and seen the growth that we have had in our community. So working out on the roads and seeing the problems that we have out there and having the interaction with the public and having some of that insight into what's going on in the community, I think gives me an advantage on knowing what's going on. Talking with the citizens in the community, listening to them. That's what the city council is for, is to listen to the people in that community to get their input on projects that are coming up or what they believe needs to be done.
And Mr. Norris.
I've been involved in the community for since 1980. I've been on the Planning Commission, the City Building and Codes Department, the Chamber of Commerce, and numerous other boards and commissions that I've gained a lot of experience working with the city and city government. I have been in a lot of the department head meetings when they were making decisions that were important to the city. I think my experience speaks for itself. I would love to continue to do that. The last 3 or 4 times that I've attended meetings, I learn something new every time I go. And I thought maybe I know it all, but I don't. The city council is a good place to be, and I think I would really like to continue.
Thank you very much. Mr. J. Albertia, you have the next question. It will go to Jimmy Brown for the first response.
Mr. Brown, we hear quite often about ethical standards in government and practices of ethical standards. What is your position on the role of an elected official and their ethical standards?
Well, as an elected official, you should have the utmost highest ethics that there are, because you are held to a higher standard. So when you're looking at issues or just talking with the public, if they don't trust you, how can they have faith in you to do your job? So as an elected official or as a public servant in general, you have to have good ethics. And if I violate my ethics, I don't think, and the city taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for my attorney. If I did something wrong, then I need to provide my own attorney. And so just being out there and making sure that you uphold the standards of being ethical in the community.
Mr. Norris?
Clarksville has had an ethics commission for since about 1983, 84. In the last 14 years, there's not been one case brought against anybody in the city on ethics, which I think speaks for the people of the city itself. There are some cases pending now, but up until that point, there weren't any. I think you have to hold yourself answerable to people. You can't go out and make mistakes, but anybody can bring an ethics charge against you. And there's not a lot that you can do to stop that, except tell the truth, try to do the right thing, and communicate with the people that you represent.
Ms. Evans?
Yeah, so as Jimmy said, I do not believe that the taxpayer holds a responsibility in paying for lawyers and representatives to defend our councilmen for their ethics complaints. With that being said, it goes without saying that elected officials are essentially held under a microscope, so we need to mind our P's and Q's. So I believe that if there is a chance that you are accused of an ethics violation, you need to own it, work through it transparently, and acknowledge what had happened.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more round of questions that will come from each of our panelists. Let's go back to Mr. Jimmy Settle. Your question will go to Mr. Gary Norris.
Thank you. Mr. Norris, as you know, because of the current COVID situation, a lot of business activity, a lot of business expansion on the national level as well as the local level is kind of on hold right now. But once it's over, there's every reason to expect that we're going to boom, maybe like never before. What role can the city council play in attracting this store or that restaurant that we all hear people say they want here so that we can be like other cities? What role can the city council do in attracting that, or do we leave that job to someone else?
Well, a lot of that job goes to our Industrial Development Board and the Chamber of Commerce. They work closely with those type of people. But the City Council can be more willing to allow tax incentives and tax breaks. I think that the state does that, and especially in the larger projects. But there are sometimes smaller projects like a restaurant. We can also encourage family businesses, the small business, which is the backbone, of course, of this community. I think the City Council makes a lot of good decisions on ordinances that come up, and maybe some of those ordinances will affect new businesses coming to Clarksville. We need to listen, and we need to act when the time comes.
Ms. Evans.
Yeah, so I feel like Clarksville as a whole is headed in the right direction. We are very appealing, being voted the #1 city to live in America. With COVID, it has dampened our businesses coming into the city. I do feel like a burst of excitement when this is all over. I know it's kind of been hard on everybody. With that being said, the revitalization of downtown is just wonderful in making Clarksville a more attractive place. I feel like it's also an encouragement for small business owners to come here. We just need to be focused on bringing them here.
Mr. Brown.
Well, if you look at a lot of the businesses that are looking for places to open, say restaurants, like some of these big names restaurants that people would like to have come here, they look at the number of rooftops, the population, the housing densities that are in the area that they want to look at, that they want to put a location. So when we get some more of this zoning that puts a little bit more people in certain areas, it does have more traffic, but those businesses that are looking to come are going, well, there's 1,000 rooftops is our minimum within 2-mile range of the restaurant. So they look at those things. But we got to do what we can to help encourage those businesses to come and show that they can make a profit here. And so we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to support those businesses.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee Irwin, your question will go to Ms. Ashley Evans.
Ms. Evans, I actually know of cases where people say they're not sure who their city council person is or what ward they live in. So what would you propose to stay connected with the residents of your ward as well as the city to increase their involvement in, say, planning for the city's future?
Yeah, so I used to be one of those people before I got more interested in our local government and started paying more attention. For myself, I have thought about this, and I feel like a ward-wide newsletter would be very beneficial, especially old school style. I know it would take a lot of time, but just dropping them off by hand, much like when you're going around canvassing, as well as just making sure your constituents know that you're open for them. I also feel being involved requires a lot of personal responsibility. not everybody is going to be interested in the government, and that's where you kind of have to make up for that by kind of pushing it, for the lack of better words, such as a ward-wide newsletter that is delivered. Might go in the trash, but the effort was there.
Mr. Jimmy Brown.
Well, you have to have ways of communicating with your constituents, because they're your boss, really. They're the voters. They're the ones that put you in that place. So you have to have those means of communication with them. So you can have those community meetings every so often. You can have the newsletters that, on the city website, each city council person has a page on there where you can email them. You can go to the city website and look up and see who your representatives are by putting in your address. So when they go on there, they could subscribe to a newsletter that you provide them every so often. They can reach you out on Facebook or, Instagram or some of the other social media things. So you just have to be out there to where they can get in touch with you. Make sure you're doing the events and invite people. The problem sometimes is people don't show up. You can give them all the information you can, and they may have 5 or 6 people. But if you can get the word out to them, then you've done what you can.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Gary Norris.
I think it's a good idea to encourage people to use social media to contact you. We have a city website. We have our phone numbers are published. Anybody can call us. I try to answer all the emails that I get. Any phone call that I get, I answer those. But I think social media is going to be the thing of the future. I think COVID put a lot of us in the position where social media was the only contact we had sometimes with the outside world. And I'm going to encourage that to my members in Ward 11. Maybe call neighborhood meetings on rezoning cases, and if there is a problem, try to compromise it. But I think you just really need to talk to your people and try to get them to talk back to you.
Thank you very much. Mr. J. Alberta, you have the last question from our panelist here today. That question will be directed to Mr. Jimmy Brown for the first response.
Mr. Brown, we've heard a lot of great answers to the questions that we've given today, but I think all those that are voting want to know you personally more than anything else. So can you tell us what your greatest professional accomplishment is? And we're not talking about your children or your spouses either, which I know are the best.
So, just some of the things I've done, going through Leadership Clarksville. I worked in traffic for a number of years, and a few years ago I was recognized by the director of the Tennessee Highway Safety Office as with a director's award for my activity in traffic enforcement. Just doesn't mean out enforcing the laws. I also do child seat checks, to make sure people know that their child seat is installed properly in their car. And that may not be a big accomplishment to some, but just knowing that that person that is leaving that site where you just checked their seat, knowing that their child is going to be safe in that car. Because we've been to crashes where a car is upside down and the child is sitting in the car seat still without a scratch on them because that seat was installed properly. So just little things like that you do may not seem real big, but in my mind, I know that child's safe or promoting traffic safety was a big part of it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Norris.
I think being invited to become a partner in a family business was one of the things that really set my life going, because at that point it gave me a little bit more time to become involved in the community. I was involved with the Planning Commission for 12 years, involved with Habitat for Humanity for about 10 years, and the Chamber for probably 15 years. And I enjoyed all that. I think I learned a lot. I hope that I improve my lifestyle because of that. I want to continue to help people. I want to be involved in the community. I love Clarksville. I'm very passionate about it. And I just, to name one thing is kind of hard. I could probably name 10 or 12 more.
And Ms. Evans.
So coming from humble beginnings, like a lot of folks have, I don't have a lot of life experience because I am young. I'm 27 years old. And I've had a few pit stops along the way. Currently, I am in college, and apart from my extended family, my immediate family, I am the only person to be on the road to get my bachelor's degree. So I'm very proud of that. I hold that above so much that I've done in my life. A lot of my experience does come through the service industry, though. I have been a manager. I've held different spots. I've been a bartender, a server. I'm very personable. So I feel like that goes hand in hand with being professional as an attractive kind of compliment, if that makes sense. Sorry, that verbiage was really weird. I apologize.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the questions from our panelists here today. So, gentlemen, thank you all very much. We turn now to the closing comments from each of our candidates. They will be given in a reverse order from the opening remarks. We will hear first from Mr. Jimmy Brown.
Well, once again, thanks for hosting this event. But to those that are out there watching this, that maybe voters in Ward 11, first of all, I'd like to ask for your vote and your support. If you need to reach out to me, you can find me on Facebook at Jimmy L. Brown for Ward 11, also on Instagram at the same name. My email address is jbrown7291@bellsouth.net. Or if you'd like to call me, my phone number is 931-305-0010. And I just think that having somebody on the council that can be out there with the people, seeing what's going on, is going to be a great asset to have on the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have closing comments from Ms. Ashley Evans.
So I just want to thank everybody here at the Chamber of Commerce, and then for those of you who are watching, for just hearing us out up here and wanting to actively participate in bringing our voices to our constituents and the people of Clarksville. I didn't really compile any closing thoughts, but I would like to speak to just the citizens of Clarksville to make sure you get out and vote, because your vote really matters. If you feel discouraged by the federal election, please do not feel discouraged by the local election. Local elections win by literal votes. So if your vote matters, it really matters in local elections. You can find my platform if you'd like to just read about me at ashleyevans411.com, as well as on Facebook at Evans411. And my email and phone number are both on there if you'd like to just reach out and start a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll hear closing comments from Mr. Gary Norris.
Well, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and Leadership Clarksville for inviting us to participate in this debate. I believe I have the time, the experience, and the passion for the city of Clarksville to continue being a member of the city council. I will work hard with the people in Ward 11 and the city council and all the residents of Clarksville to make it a better place to work, live, and enjoy life. We are the greatest city in the United States, and I hope we can continue to be that way. I would appreciate your vote and support. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to express my appreciation to each of you, our candidates here today, for sharing your time and your thoughts with us, and more than that, being willing to serve our community as an elected official in the Clarksville City Council representing Ward number 11. So thank you very much for your participation here today and your willingness to serve. I want to remind you that early voting will take place starting Wednesday, October the 14th. It will run through Thursday, October the 29th. The location will be at the Election Commission office. You can find them at 350 Pageant Lane, Suite 404. I want to say thank you once again to our panelists, Mr. Jimmy Settle, Mr. Lee Irwin, and Mr. Jay Albertia. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your questions today. And thanks also to our timekeeper, Mr. Phil Harpel. Thanks to the staff here at Customs House Museum and Cultural Center for hosting today's forum. And thank you also to Leadership Clarksville, the Clarksville Area Chamber of Commerce, and to Rick Goodwin Productions for making this forum possible. Until next time, I'm Van Stokes saying, so long, everyone.